Let me start this discussion now. We talked about edge dislocations in our last class. The concept of dislocation seems to be a very theoretical concept, or which was thought of as a reason behind some of the observations that people had. The basic observations which led to this thought was that the strength of single crystals, the actual strength observed in experiments was very less as compared to the theoretical values that were predicted by scientists. So we said yesterday that the theoretical values of tau max, that is the shear stress required for deformation in a single crystal, were somewhere in the range of g upon or 0.16 times g, where g is the shear modulus, which actually tells me that it shall be in GPa, but results told us that it was in megapascals. So there was actually maybe 100 or 1000 times reduction in the strength of the crystals which was observed. And then people thought that, okay, your model of a layer of atoms sliding above each other may not be valid, because earlier it was thought that maybe because if there are close packed layers like this, it was thought that, okay, this layer of atoms is sliding over the lower layer of atoms, which will result in breakage of bonds, all the bonds simultaneously, and this will require a very large amount of force. A very large amount of force was required. It was discounted by the observations, which led to the concept of edge dislocations, and then today we'll talk about the screw dislocations also. But if you understand the concept of edge dislocation, it is more than sufficient for us to move forward. So this gave us the concept of this movement, which I have elaborated. This is how it was postulated that this can be the one way in which things are happening. That is, the bonds are not simultaneously broken. One bond is broken at one time, and then this is how the dislocation that you find here. It was the starting point of dislocation. It was starting here, and it has ended here. So it is just an what we say a simulation to make you understand that how it can be there. So the dislocation has moved. So we say that this dislocation will have what we call as movement also. And then we said yesterday that we talked about the concept of slip. So this deformation because of dislocation motion is what we refer to as a slip. And we said that this slip is responsible for the deformation which is produced in metals. The macroscopic deformation that you observe is because of this microscopic phenomena of slip, or even less than the microscope level. You can say it is somewhere near the nanometer level or the angstrom level where this phenomena is happening. And combined together, this is leading us to the plastic deformation which is produced in the material. Simultaneously, we have said yesterday that the experiments have told us that the crystal structure of the deformed material is not changing, means the crystal structure remains the same. And then this basically this analogy or this phenomena of slip or the movement of dislocation that we observe here goes very well with this observation that the crystal structure is undistorted. That is what you observe here also, that the deformation has also taken place, but still the crystal structure is intact. So if it was FCC before deformation, it remains FCC. If it was BCC, it remains BCC. Because of if you say that this deformation is happening because of maybe rise in temperature also, you may find that the lattice parameter slightly changes because of the thermal issues there, but still the basic crystal structure still remains the same. So this goes well with this theoretical concept of movement of dislocations and slip here. Okay, so let's move forward with this basic understanding here. I said yesterday itself that we have understood that what actually happens to be an edge dislocation. So the edge dislocation is what we refer to as line which is here, it's a line defect. It's a line defect here. We are saying we conceptualized it by both methods of considering a extra half plane which is available to us, but it is more for understanding. And then we said that you conceptualized the same edge dislocation with the help of the boundary between the slipped portion of the crystal and the unslipped portion of the crystal. So we say this is, then in that concept of slip, we said this is the slip plane, the gray one which is there, and then this is the direction in which the slip is happening. This is the direction in which the slip is happening. So in the context of this model here, atomistic model here, I can say the slip direction happens to be in this direction here. So what is happening here? So there are two, before I come to this logic, we said there are two terms which will be associated with the dislocations. The edge dislocation right now, we say one of them is the tangent vector t cap, which is tangent to the direction of the dislocation line. That is what you observe here. This is the direction of t cap. And then we say the second vector associated with this is perpendicular to the direction to the dislocation line, and it is in the direction of slip, which is known as the Burgess vector. So this Burgess vector B dash is actually in the what we call as the slip direction, because the crystal is slipping in this direction or this direction as I wrote here. Okay, so let's try to understand the concept of Burgess vector. It was again a theoretical concept, but very well understood with the help of, very well corroborated then later on with the experimental data. And that is how it is now gained its validity. Okay, so we already see that. So let us see what is the concept of Burgess vector. So for understanding that, I first ask you to look here on this left-hand figure, this figure here, the left one, where we find that it is a perfect crystal. So you started with this point from here, you moved maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 steps here, 9 atomic distances here. Then we say we move downwards, upwards, and it closes this circuit. So this circuit that you're trying to draw here is also called as the Burgess circuit. But let us now look at the second one, where you have an imperfect crystal, means there is an imperfection in it, and I say that imperfection is edge dislocation, which is observed here because of this red plane, which we are saying that this can be treated as an extra half plane. Now because of this, we find here that you started from this point, so this was your starting point, and once I complete it here, the circuit is not closing. So you end here. So you start from this point and you finish at this point. To complete this circuit, I need to move one more distance. This distance is required, and the magnitude of this vector is actually what we refer to as the Burgess vector. So this is basically what we refer to as the concept of Burgess vector. And you can actually try to find out with the help of the right hand rule here. Now, which keep it in mind that we are referring to these green balls here, which we are saying are nothing but they're atoms. They are atoms. And if you go back to your discussion earlier, we have seen that the distance between two atoms, where let's say it's a perfect crystal, I start with here. So the distance between two atoms is nothing but the interatomic distance, interatomic spacing, you can call it as. Okay, this interatomic spacing, which we are looking at, the distance between the adjacent atoms, we have already seen that this interatomic spacing is variable, and it depends upon it varies along, or whether a better answer is it varies along various directions. It varies along directions, and that is why we said that you talked about the concept of linear density. Some of the directions in the unit cell or in the crystal structure are closely packed, and some of them are less closely packed. The ones which have a high linear density, they are called as the planes which are what we say as the directions which are close packed directions. So this distance between the adjacent atoms is dependent upon what we refer to as the directions or crystallographic directions. We will see later on that we have already actually seen this, that in the case of your BCC lattice, in the case of your BCC lattice, you have the close pack direction happens to be the body diagonal, and the direction, if you give it by the notation, it is the 1 1 1 direction. I hope you can recall this. Yes, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So we say the close pack direction, the linear density is highest along the body diagonal because the atoms are touching along this here, and that is why the close pack direction happens to be the 1 1 1 direction. And what about if you recall this, you can probably answer what is the case for FCC. Yes, काजल, बाकी तो सब लोग ऐसे सोते रहते हैं, चलो कोई तो बोल रहा है. Let us see.
Yes, sir.
So when I talk about the FCC lattice, we say this face diagonal, this is the close pack direction. Is that right? All
The
the
110.
yes, it is of the type 110. So 110 type direction is the what we call as the close pack direction, which means that the spacing that you are referring to here, this interatomic spacing, will be smallest in the case of 110 direction for FCC, and it will be smallest in the case of 111 direction for your BCC crystal structure. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That means now, if you talk about the concept of Burgers vector B, which we say was this interatomic distance, just to close this circuit, means the magnitude of the Burgers vector will also vary, which will be different
Yes,
for
sir.
FCC and it will be different for BCC.
Yes, sir.
So this Burgers vector will vary for crystal structures, means it will be different for FCC and BCC, but it is incomplete to say this statement. I shall say that it will vary with crystal structure as well as in the same crystal structure, the magnitude of the Burgers vector will vary along the directions.
Yes,
Am I right? Along
yes,
the
sir.
directions, because the Burgers vector will be smallest along which direction in FCC?
Along the 110.
Yes, along the 110. So along the 110 direction, this direction, the Burgers vector that you find here will be the smallest one. So why it is important to us, I will explain you in my next slide. That we are concerned about the magnitude of the Burgers vector. Please keep it in mind that we are now talking about the magnitude of the Burgers vector. That magnitude of the Burgers vector is varying along the various crystallographic directions in a crystal structure. Okay, you will notice that since the last 2-3 classes, I am not asking students to cooperate to come along and then study simultaneously, because I have seen that it is taking a lot of time and most of you are not interested. So let it be that way. Anyone who is interested will study. Otherwise, let it be the case that we are having right now. Okay. So we said that, okay, this is the concept of Burgers vector. And we say the magnitude of the Burgers vector will vary from crystal structure to crystal structure, and it will vary along various directions in the same unit cell also. Okay. So we said that this is just a compilation of what I've already said. That dislocations can be considered as a boundary between the slip plane and that one. the direction and magnitude of the slip is characterized by the Burgers vector of the dislocation. The direction and magnitude of the slip is characterized by the Burgers vector of the dislocation. Please read this carefully with this figure. So if the slip was happening along this direction, in the case of edge dislocations, we will see that the direction of the Burgers vector is actually telling us the direction of the slip. Like this. This is what you see. That if this is the direction of the Burgers vector here, this is B Burgers vector. This is also telling us the direction of the slip actually. And that we are saying that the magnitude of slip. Now the magnitude of the slip happens to be that in each step, how much movement will take place. Each step, the movement will be 1 atomic distance. And this atomic distance is actually represented by the Burgers vector along that direction. And that is why we say that this is true, the second statement that you are saying. So we said this is the rule that we use here. And dislocations tend to have as small Burgers vector as possible. Why it is true? I will answer it with the help of an equation. Okay, let's move forward. Before coming to this, I will go to other. This is the second type of dislocation which is possible here. The first one was edge dislocation, very easy to visualize. The second one is screw dislocation, slightly difficult to visualize, but still I will try to explain it to you. So this is the 3D figure of the crystal, and we are saying that this is the Burgers vector that you are, Burgers circuit that you have plotted. So it is a perfect crystal. So it is a perfect crystal in which the circuit is closing. And if I create an imperfection, now the imperfection which I have created is not an edge dislocation. If it was an edge dislocation, the Burgers vector would have been in which direction? The Burgers vector would have been in this direction if it was an edge dislocation. Is it right?
Yes, sir.
The vector required to close the Burgers circuit. If I put an extra plane, I will need a Burgers vector in this direction to close the circuit. But that is not the case that is happening in the screw dislocation. So what you have done, it is just shearing. So you have just taken half part of this crystal and then sheared it with the help of applying a force like this. So you have applied a force this way and this way. And this has caused a slip here. Again, the slip has happened. You can see here that this part of the crystal is now slipped out. And this is the slip plane. And now you need the Burgers vector in this direction, which is mentioned here, this direction, to close the Burgers circuit. So the dislocation still happens to be this dislocation line. But now the Burgers vector that you are seeing here in the case of screw dislocation is parallel to the dislocation line. It was not the case. In the case of edge dislocation, we saw that this was the edge dislocation. It was moving like this. The slipping was happening in this direction. So we said this is the direction of the Burgers vector and this is the dislocation line. So the Burgers vector was perpendicular to the dislocation line in the case of edge dislocation, whereas here we see that the Burgers vector here is parallel to the dislocation line in the case of screw dislocation. Okay, so this is another way to look at the same thing. A better understanding can be taken like this. So the Burgers circuit in a perfect crystal shall close. But what I have done? So each of these boxes that you are seeing here is representing the unit cell. It is nothing but the stack of unit cells. So you have stacked the unit cells to form still it is a single crystal. That is why all the unit cells are oriented in the same direction. If it is a multi-crystalline or a polycrystalline material, you will have different orientations. So you have slipped the crystal like this, and what has happened is that this blue one happens to be the slip plane. The dislocation line is perpendicular to this ABCD, means this is the dislocation line that you are referring to. And the closing vector, the Burgers vector happens to be this. And it is parallel to the dislocation line. So this is the concept of what we refer to as screw dislocation. Okay, let's move forward. So the edge dislocations, if you concentrate upon this, are represented by this symbol, perpendicular, where you can say that this leg is pointing towards the extra half plane. So this is pointing towards the extra half plane. Means it can be possible that the extra half plane is in the upper part of the crystal, then it will be pointed like. It can be inverted so that the extra half plane can be in the downward part of the crystal. Then you will say that the edge dislocation is shown like this way. And when I look at now this concept and the relationship between T and B, we are seeing here that if it is an edge dislocation, this is an edge dislocation, this is the slip region, this is the boundary between the slip and the non-slip region, and this happens to be the tangent vector. Tangent vector is parallel to the dislocation line, and B, the Burgess vector, is perpendicular to the dislocation line, but it is pointing towards the direction of the slip. It is pointing towards the direction of the slip. Okay, so this is what happens in the case of your edge dislocation. Let's continue with this discussion. I'll come to it in a moment. Okay, so there can be mixed dislocations, which we'll be not talking about right now. This is the concept, the same concept which I have been referring to time and again, that you have a dislocation line. Right now, this is the concept of what we call as the edge type of dislocation, where we find that you have tried to apply a force here to shear it, and this is the dislocation line, and the same concept you explain here, that you apply the force here, and you have the slip plane which is available to us, and this is the basic concept which we'll find in many textbooks, that the dislocation movement is just like the movement. So what the caterpillar does, it lifts one leg or set of legs at a time, and then it starts moving. So it is stationary here. Instead of moving all the legs simultaneously, moving few legs will consume less energy, so it is more energy efficient. So the method is like this, and the same thing is happening here in this case also, that instead of breaking all the bonds simultaneously, so this is the slip plane, this plane happens to be the slip plane, and this is the direction of slip, and in this particular case this happens to be the direction of the magnitude of the Burgess vector also, the distance between the two atoms here. Okay, so this is the same concept with the help of another figure. One thing which has been noticed again, that to cause the motion of the dislocation, energy will be required. Energy will be required. That means some force is needed to cause this deformation. How much force is needed to cause this deformation? That is actually found that the energy required to cause the dislocation to move by 1 unit of translation, means from one point to this point. So this is 1 unit of translation here. The energy required to move a dislocation by 1 unit of translation is proportional to the square of the magnitude of the Burgess vector. So E is proportional to B square. E is proportional to B square. Means now you can see that why I wrote that. Dislocations tend to have as small as Burgess vector as possible, because it will need less energy to cause the movement of the dislocation. Because we are saying that the energy required to cause the dislocation to move by 1 unit distance from 3 to 4 is actually proportional to the square of the Burgess vector. Smaller is the Burgess vector, less energy will be required, and it will be easy for the slip to happen, or slip is actually responsible for plastic deformation. Does it point towards anything towards the close pack directions? Megha? Yes, Megha Bohut. Bhuvnesh Sharma.
Yes, sir.
So once I say that the energy required for the dislocation to move 1 unit distance from here to here is proportional to the square of the Burgess vector. And we already said that the magnitude of the Burgess vector is direction dependent. And for close pack directions, the Burgess vector will be smallest or largest?
Small, sir.
Yes, smallest actually. For close packed directions, the magnitude of the Burgess vector will be smallest, which tells me that less energy will be required to cause the movement along those directions. Can I say that?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Means it will be more favorable to have deformation along those directions.
Yes, sir.
It will be easy to move that. So that is what I need you to understand. That slip happens along certain preferential directions. Preferential directions which are close back directions. And later on we'll see that it also happens along certain preferential planes which are actually close back planes. Now, before we move forward, I'll again tell you that this was an experimental observation. That is, before postulating this E proportional to B square and the next Peirce-Nabarro stress equation that we'll be talking about here, it was observed that slip or plastic deformation in single crystals is more favorable. It happens at a lower force along certain particular crystallographic directions. And that is why people started thinking about that, why it is happening. And then they came out with the concept of this slip and Burgess vector, that is magnitude of force required or the magnitude of the energy required to cause slip is proportional to the Burgess vector. Less is the Burgess vector means the close pack directions, the slip will be easier or less force is required. Okay, let's move forward. So this is the concept which I explained earlier, that the Burgess vector happens to be the closing vector to close this Burgess circuit here. And now I will try to relate it to this concept. I have been using this similar figures time and again. We have seen that this is what we are trying to show here is the CCP structure, and we are showing here the stacking sequence, ABC stacking sequence, and we are trying to show the close pack planes. We are trying to show the close pack planes. Why we are showing the close pack planes right now? Because we have already understood in my last slide that close pack directions are more favorable for slipping. Means the dislocations will move along those directions. And incidentally, in this particular case, we find that the close pack directions, this one, which is in this particular case happens to be 110 direction, and the other one, which is again a family of 110 direction, they are all contained within the close pack planes. Is that right? Parav Bansal. Ritika Kaushik.
Yes, sir.
Parav Bansal. Parav Bansal. Parav Bansal.
Yes, sir.
Hello? Are you looking at the screen?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can you tell me that for this close pack direction, which is 110, what will be the magnitude of the Burgess vector? These are atoms.
Yes.
What will be the magnitude of the Burgess vector for 110? What is Burgess vector? The distance between the nearest neighboring atoms. And
Yes.
what is that? It is half of this. Is it right? It is half of the phase diagonal.
By 2.
Yes, it is
Root
half
2a
of
by
the
2.
phase diagonal. Yes, you're right. If A happens to be your lattice constant, your phase diagonal will be root 2a, and the half of that happens to be the magnitude of the Burgess vector. So this is what is the magnitude of the Burgess vector in this particular case happens to be. Okay. But now why it is important? So we already said that the energy required to cause a dislocation to move is proportional to the square of the Burgess vector. So smaller is this vector, less energy, more favorable slip. But in addition to that, we said that the planes, some of the planes are also very important to us. So why that is there, I will just explain it in my next slide. So we already said that what is slip? We already explained that the process by which dislocation moves and causes a metallic material. Keep it in mind that the concept of dislocation is valid only for most of the times for only for metals. So the direction in which the dislocation moves is the slip direction. Let it be very clear. The direction in which the dislocation moves is the slip direction. And it is the direction of the Berger vector for edge dislocation. Now I introduced another equation, which is a very famous equation in material science. We call it as a Peirce-Nabarro equation. Peirce-Nabarro stress. It is again, as I said already, that it was observed by scientists that slip or plastic deformation happens at a lower force along certain directions, and then they started looking for the reasons why that. Peirce-Nabarro then promulgated this expression, which tells me that the shear stress tau required to cause deformation along one particular plane is given by C is a constant, exponent of minus kd upon b. And what are these values? Tau is the shear stress required to cause the dislocation to move. Now d, this d happens to be our own, which we have been referring to time and again, dHKL. That is, this d happens to be your interplanar spacing. And this b happens to be the magnitude of the Berger's vector. So the stress required for plastic deformation or movement of a dislocation is given as C exponent minus kd upon b, which tells me, because it's a minus exponent, that the stress required for a deformation to happen or a dislocation to move depends upon d, that is interplanar spacing, and it also depends upon b, but they are in inverse relation. So what we come to know there, C and K are material constants, and then they experimented and then they found material constants for various set of materials. So this tells me as I said, the explanation of the Peirce-Nabarro equation, which is tau is C exponent minus kd upon b. So we already know that any system will occur, any event will occur that requires the least expenditure of energy. So the dislocation movement also will happen along those directions and along those planes. So if you keep in mind your concept of slip plane, which I introduced in my last slides, and slip direction. These are two things that we introduced, slip plane and slip direction. So these two things we were referring to in our discussion there, that slip plane and slip directions. So the slip planes here, dislocation will move in a slip system. Now I am introducing another concept, slip system. So what is a slip system? A slip system happens to be a combination of a slip direction and a slip plane. So I can see that if this is the plane, just an hypothetical plane, along which direction the slip is happening. So if it is happening along this direction, I will say if this happens to be the 1, 1, 1 plane and the direction 1, 0 direction, and then combined together is what we call as a slip system. Means for an FCC system, it may be that 1, 1, 1 plane and 1, 1, 0 direction happens to be the slip system, which requires maybe a least expenditure of energy. Okay, come to the second point. The stress required, tau, for the dislocation to move, it increases exponentially with the length of the Berger's vector. This b is here, it's minus kd upon b. So higher is the Berger's vector, more stress is required. And that is why the directions along which the Berger vector is small, the stress will be small, and they are more favorable for plastic deformation. Then we have d also, and then d has an inverse relation. So we say the slip, it's already done, slip direction must have small repeat distance or high linear density, we already know that. The close pack directions in metals satisfy this. It is already explained in my previous slides. Then coming to the concept of D, the interplanar spacing. So the stress required to cause a dislocation, it decreases exponentially with interplanar spacing. Means higher is the interplanar spacing, less will be the stress required tau, which tells me that the planes which are far away, which are separated from each other at a larger distance, they will be more favorable for slip, where D is large, because we see the stress decreases exponentially with interplanar spacing D. So this is D. If when D is increasing, stress is decreasing. It is opposite relation as far as B is concerned. That is, when B was increasing, stress was increasing. So this expression now tells me that I can conclude from this here that slip planes will be those planes which are having a large interatomic spacing, and slip directions will be those directions which have high linear density, or which are close pack directions, or in certain cases there may not be any close pack direction. So high linear density is a concept that I will try to use with you here. Okay, so let's go forward. So this is understood here, the concept of Peirce-Navarro stress and the influence of Berger vector and the interplanar spacing on the slip system. This is another way to look at graphically. We are saying that slip occurs most easily on planes which are far apart, which have higher interplanar spacing, and we can conclude that the slip planes are close packed planes. So the planes which have the high planar density, they are also, or those are having as high planar density, or maybe close packed, or not as close packed but as high as possible, they are more favorable to slip. So slip will occur along close packed planes or high planar density planes. And if you go back to the last slide, that is not sufficient information. So slip will occur along close packed planes, and if you recall, in your FCC structure, the close packed planes were 1-1-1 type of planes. And in that case, I need to further add that in which direction the slip will have. The slip will happen along directions which are close packed directions, or the directions which have high linear density. In the case of your FCC lattice, it happens to be the 1-1-0 set of directions. So you can then see that there will be certain set of planes which are more favorable. There are certain directions which are more favorable. And this precisely explains, if you recall my first classes, we said that FCC materials are more ductile. We will explain it with the help of the slip phenomena, that why they are more ductile, because there are more slip systems available. This slide here explains, this figure here explains the concept of interatomic distance, interplanar distance, sorry. So what we are trying to show here is that the planes, these are two close packed planes, the distance is d1. When I consider non-close packed planes, the distance is less. So the planes which are closely packed, their interatomic separation is larger. Another thing which you observe here physically is that the roughness is less. Here the roughness is more. That is why this can be taken as one physical reason why less force is required, or why less stress is required for the dislocation to move along close packed planes. Okay. Let us see what we further intend to do here. I will remove this. So if you see the BCC lattice, BCC crystal structure, the preferred slip direction, as I said, will be that having the smallest Berger vector, which will be this 1, 1, 1 family of directions. This is all 1, 1, 1 directions. So 1, 1, 1 family of directions. And in the case of your FCC lattice now, it will be the 1, 1, 0 family of directions. This one. And this was the magnitude of the Burgers vector here in this particular case that we just said that. Okay. Now come to your planes here. That what are the preferred planes? I am referring to the concept of non-parallel 1-1-1 planes in FCC. We have seen already in our previous discussions that ABC stacking sequence was also giving me 1-1-1 set of planes, but they were all parallel to each other. Is that right? Amikul, Basur?
Yes, sir.
So we, in our earlier concept, we said that you have A, B, C stacking sequence, which was here A, this was B, and this was C. That was giving me all parallel set of planes, all having 1-1-1, as what we say 1-1-1 planes here, which were parallel. But in a FCC crystal structure, we have 4 such planes which are of the 1-1-1 family, but still they are non-parallel. And I'm trying to tell you that. Why I'm telling you? Because this 1-1-1 plane, which we already know, it is available to show, it is shown here. Then I'm showing here 1-1 bar 1 plane. They are crystallographically equivalent. Yes, sir?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
right? They are same. They have the same, this plane as well as this plane, they have the same planar density.
Yes, sir.
They have the same planar density. And these are both closed packed planes.
Yes, sir.
I can say that in a CCP structure, they are both closed packed planes, whether it is 1-1-1 or 1-1 bar 1. Similarly, there are 2 more planes which satisfy this criteria. They are crystallographically equivalent, or they belong to the family of 1-1-1 planes, which are non-parallel, and those are here. So they are the 1 bar 1-1 plane, 1 bar 1-1 plane, and then we have the bar 1-1-1 plane. This is bar 1-1-1, and this is 1 bar 1-1. Again, these 2 planes are crystallographically equivalent to the previous ones which we have shown. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
They are same. Crystallographically, they are same. So these planes also will have the planar density same as far as that is what I said, that it is 1-1-1 family of planes. They have the same planar density. They are close packed. Means if you go to the concept of slip, which is favorable, means all these 4 planes are having the equal favorability or equal probability that slip can happen along these planes. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then what are the directions along which the slip can happen now? Can you help me? Can you help me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. So for the direction, it can be this direction, which I'm saying is your 1-1-0 direction.
0. Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Similarly, this is also 1-1 same family of directions.
1-0-1.
Yes, and this is also the same family of directions.
Yes, sir.
Same is the case here.
Yes,
Here
sir.
and here. So each in a CCP system or in a FCC system, there are 4 slip planes which are non-parallel to each other, because parallel ones are the same. You cannot say they are different because parallel planes are all same. But these are all
Yes, sir.
non-parallel planes of 1-1-1 family. So there are 4 such slip planes, and each plane has got 3 directions which are there, 1, 2, and 3. And all these three directions in each plane, they are all close packed directions. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So this tells me that okay, there are many possibilities in which this thing can happen. The slip can happen. Where our close packing of planes is also possible, is available to us, and many directions which are available to us which are close packed or they have high linear density. But if you take the combination now, it will not be, that means here it can say that this is 3 directions in each plane and then 4 planes, but there are few common directions.
Yes, sir.
This is what we now know. This is one of the questions which I asked in my quiz. If you remember the quiz question, this is exactly the same question. That what is the common direction to 1 1 bar 1 and
Yes,
bar
sir.
1 1 1? And we find that looking at it very simply, I can say this happens to be the common direction, which we
101.
found that as 101 direction. Incidentally, only 60% students have got it right. But anyway, so there are few common directions which are available to us, and that is why we can see that why now I will try to go to the concept of plastic deformation with the help of slip. So is it understandable now how plastic deformation is attributed to the phenomena of slip which happens at the level of what we call as dislocation motion? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One thing which I can simply tell is that if more force is required for a dislocation to move, the strength of the material will increase or decrease.
Mm,
If I say I need more force for a dislocation to move,
Yes, sir.
so it is a strong material or a weak material?
Strong material.
It is a strong material. Yes, that's what precisely what we are going towards now. Because if you now try to recollect what we have been referring to in our last classes, we are trying to build up the basic information regarding the mechanical behavior of materials from a material science perspective. And I understand that I am able to do to some extent now the concept. So what we are trying to understand here is that if we understand that the plastic deformation happens because of motion of dislocations, and if somehow I am able to stop this motion, or I am able to increase the force required to cause the deformation to be higher, I am able to increase that, I am able to make the material more stronger.
Yes, sir.
And that is precisely what we do when we go for alloying, when we go for heat treatment, when we go for many other methods which will be coming up later in our studies, that we try to increase the resistance to the motion of dislocation. So you put some obstacles in the motion of the dislocations, and by putting those obstacles, it is observed that material becomes stronger. Work hardening is one of them. That's what we come to strengthening mechanism. That's the next topic we will be taking up. Strengthening mechanisms. How do you strengthen metals, specifically metals? How do you strengthen metals? Pure metals are there, but you can strengthen them. The basic concept behind strengthening mechanisms happens to be blocking the movement of dislocations. Means increasing the force or the stress required for a dislocation to move will make my material strong. And this is how what we do in the case by solid solution strengthening. We will see how does that help us on a very brief scale. Once we are through, we go to that. Okay, so this is the same concept explained with the help of another diagram. I hope this does not need any explanation now.
No, sir.
The same thing.
Yes, sir.
They're showing the it's 111 plane shown here, and the 3 directions, the closed pack planes as well as the closed pack directions are shown. And we find here that you have many slip systems. Actually, there are 12 slip systems which are operating for an FCC system, which is a very high system, which is a high number of what we say slip systems. For a HCP hexagon closed pack, this is actually 3 slip systems. And this basically, the concept of plastic deformation explains the difference which we said in the beginning, that FCC and HCP, when I compare, which one was more ductile?
FCC.
FCC was ductile as compared to HCP material. So it was more ductile, I can say. And this ductility is explained because of the more number of slip systems which are operating in a FCC system. We will give it a more reasoning through one more explanation on single crystal deformation, which is given by Schmid. So we call it as Schmid's law. So Schmid's law will be one thing which I'll take up in my next class.